Hi guys, and welcome to my American Light Tank Roundup for the 9.3 patches. We are going to be covering all the nerfs that are going to be happening to current tanks in-game, and we are going to be covering the new tanks that are coming into the game for the American lines. I'm going to cover the other lines in other videos, but in the meantime, if you follow my channel, if you follow my Twitch stream, you'll know that I love my light tanks. And I love my light tanks because you can spot the best player on the enemy team at the very start of the game, and you can simply watch as your team tear tanks apart. You can have a huge effect on the battle, depending on the map, of course. Unfortunately, I don't agree with a lot of the map choices Wargaming have made, but there are still some really good maps for scouts. So, for example, you can use to passive scout, you can tear enemy tanks apart, you can assassinate isolated low health tanks, even if they are even if they're higher tier. You can active scout and basically annoy isolated heavies and watch as they get taken out by your teammates. You can distract them so that they focus all their attention on you, again while your teammates take them out. Eventually. And light tanks are fantastic for hunting down RT.
Enemy armor is hit. Penetration. They're knocked down.
I also love the fact that light tanks can not only locate, but they can also assassinate isolated tanks, like this T-29. Yeah, hit but no damage, but I'm fast enough to turn around, take him out. You're fast, you're maneuverable, and you can trick them into pointing their gun in the wrong direction. So I think it's safe to say I love scout tanks, I really do, and the fact that I do a scouting series on my channel pretty much proves that. But there are a lot of changes coming in 9.1 for the American scouts, and that's what this video is going to be all about. So here's the upcoming American tech tree, or part of it, for 9.3, and there have been quite a lot of changes. The M5 Stuart, I've painted it in here because the screenshot didn't have it, but the M5 Stuart isn't being left alone. Wargaming have cast its spying glass on the M5 Stuart, and it's going to be receiving some nerfs. Now, if you guys remember the M5 Stuart, or you have one, you'll probably remember it like this. This is the M5 Stuart as it currently is in-game, with the open top final turret and the howitzer, the 75mm howitzer. Now, this is a great tank. It's fun to play. In fact, the very first scouting video I ever put up on my channel was me basically playing the M5 Stuart with the derp gun and having a heck of a lot of fun in it. This is going to be losing not only its open top final turret, but it's going to be losing its howitzer in 9.3. Now, it's being stated that it's historically inaccurate, but that's not quite true, because the M5 Stuart did actually have this turret, and it did actually have this gun. Problem was, with this turret and with this gun, the M5 Stuart was not a light tank, it was arty. So this is basically an RT configuration of the M5 Stuart, and it's not a light tank, so both the turret and the gun are being removed. Now, if you're not using the 75mm howitzer on the Stuart, you are probably using the 37mm. It's another really good gun, but it's not great, and the howitzer was a lot more fun. But the 37mm on the M5 Stuart, as is in-game at the moment, has 56mm of penetration and 40 damage. So it's an okay gun. It's not great, but it's not bad. However, because the turret is being removed and because the howitzer is being removed, Wargaming are going to be giving the M5 Stuart another top gun. So what you're going to be getting is a 37mm T16. And the tank is going to look like this. So you can see where I got the screenshot from, what leaks, but yeah, you can see we no longer have the derp gun and we no longer have the open top turret. The turret on the tank is going to look very similar to the stock turret. About the only changes are its stats and the fact that the upgraded turret happens to have a machine gun. So visually, a couple of improvements, but it's basically the same as the stock turret with stats increases. The new M5 Stuart is a mix of some nerfs and some buffs. It has actually been, I would say, nerfed due to the fact it has lost its 75mm derp gun. However, it has been buffed by receiving a new final gun. I'll talk about that gun in a moment. The speed has also been buffed. It's moving from 58 kilometers an hour up to 64.4 kilometers an hour. So the tank is going to be faster, but unfortunately, I think it's only going to be faster in a straight line because it has received a nerf as regards its traverse speed. At the moment, its traverse is 45 degrees per second and it's being nerfed down to 42 degrees per second. So while it may be faster in a straight line, I do think it's going to take longer to turn, and I would guess that it will drop speed while turning. The terrain resistance, on the other hand, has been buffed, so the terrain resistance is about 10% better than it currently is in-game. So I don't know if the nerfs and buffs are going to have a significant difference on how the tank actually handles. It has also had a health buff. The hit points on the tank have been buffed by a whole 24 hit points. Doesn't seem like much, but it might make the difference between dying in 4 shots as opposed to dying in 3 shots. So 24 more hit points for the M5 Stuart as well. But the major change to this tank has to be the replacement for the howitzer, and it's going to be getting a 37mm T16. Now, the current 37mm available in-game to the M5 Stuart has 56mm of penetration and 40 alpha damage. Now, the new T16 this tank is going to be getting also has 56mm of penetration and 40 alpha damage, so no difference there, but the T16 also happens to be an autoloader. Yes, it's got 5 shots in the clip and it's got a very quick reload. So to reload the clip on the new M5 Stuart is only going to take just over 7 seconds. So you've got 5 shots doing 40 alpha damage. That's basically a potential of 200 burst damage with this gun, with a reload of 7 seconds. The accuracy isn't great at 0.42, but the aim time is excellent at 1.7. It retains its amazing 10 degrees of gun depression, so I still think it's going to be a very fun tank to play. It's going to be faster, it's going to maneuver better on rough ground, but its traverse speed is being nerfed, and it may be losing the howitzer, but the final gun does look fun. I mean, 200 burst alpha damage in a 5-clip autoloader isn't something you can sneeze at, even when the penetration only happens to be 56mm and alpha damage is only 40. I think that the M5 Stuart is still going to be a pretty interesting tank. And the autoloader basically gives it 10% more DPM than the actual 37mm it has available for it at the moment. So yeah, I think the M5 Stuart might still be fun to play. Moving back to the tech tree, we're going to come back to the M5 Stuart because you'll see that not much has changed. the M5 Stuart still moves on to the Chaffee, and it still moves on to the M7. So you're going to have to use the Stuart to unlock both of these tanks if you want to elite it. But you've got a big choice to make, because now you've got two different routes up to the T57 Heavy at tier 10. You can go the current route, which is from the M5 Stuart down to the M7 medium tank, into the T21 and T71, the tier 6 and 7 American light tanks, which in turn lead to the T69, T54E1 American medium tanks at tier 8 and tier 9, and eventually the tier 10 T57 Heavy. That choice is still there, and nothing has changed as regards that grind. However, you'll also see that the M5 Stuart still leads on to the Chaffee, but the Chaffee is no longer end of line. The Chaffee actually leads somewhere now, and that means that the XP requirements required to going from the M5 Stuart to the Chaffee have fallen significantly. I don't have exact details of how much XP is going to be required to get from the M5 Stuart to the Chaffee, but I do know that the Chaffee to the T37, the new tier 6 American light tank that I'm going to be covering later in the video, is only 28,000 XP. So if the tier 5 to tier 6 grind is only 28,000 XP, I imagine the M5 Stuart grind to the Chaffee is going to drop to around maybe 17 or 18,000 XP, significantly less painful than it was. So that's pretty much all the changes for the Stuart, and we are going to be moving on to the Chaffee, because the Chaffee has had quite a lot of changes. As I said, the Chaffee was end of line, but it is no longer end of line. If you notice, the Chaffee is now a cross tier. It means that basically instead of being end of line, you can now move from the Chaffee to American RT. You can move to the M41, the tier 5 American RT from the Chaffee, and you can also move from the Chaffee to the brand new T37 at tier 6. So the Chaffee is now a grinder. It is no longer end of line, and to elite the Chaffee, you're unfortunately going to have to grind out both the T37 and the M41. But I do know that the XP required from the Chaffee to the T37 is only going to be about 28,000 XP, so it's not going to be too painful a grind. However, changes to the tech tree aren't the only changes that have happened to the Chaffee. I am going to be covering the Chaffee in a future video. I think I'm going to be making an ode to the Chaffee in celebration of how good this tank was, as it currently is in 9.2, but in 9.3 it is going to be changed significantly, and basically most of the stats and most of the attributes of the Chaffee are going to be nerfed. It's going to receive a health nerf. It's going from 580 down to 440. Its view range is being nerfed from 400 to 390. Its weight is being made slightly lighter, so I guess that's a buff, but at the same point, or at the same time, it's also going to be losing engine power. It's moving from a 500 horsepower engine down to a 460 horsepower engine. So whether or not that's going to change the performance of the tank too much, I don't know. The hull traverse is being nerfed significantly from 46 degrees currently down to 42 degrees per second. However, it is getting a speed buff from 56 kilometers an hour at the moment up to 77.2 kilometers an hour. So that is very, very nice. The ground resistance is also being improved on the tank, so it's going to traverse across rough ground better, so I guess that is a buff. But the final gun, one of the things that makes this tank such an absolute joy to play, the top gun is being nerfed. It's currently got a 76mm with 137mm of pen and 115 alpha damage. That is being nerfed to a 75mm gun. The penetration is being nerfed significantly from 137 down to 96, and the alpha damage is being nerfed from 115 down to 110. That means that it gets a big DPM decrease, huge DPM decrease, and on top of that, because the penetration penetration has also been nerfed so much that really the chances of penning most of those shots are going to be a lot lower, so it's going to be a huge DPM decrease. The reload time has been increased. The rate of fire has been decreased, actually. That's a little bit of a buff. The shell velocity has been decreased by a huge amount, almost 40%, so it's going to take almost 40% longer for your shell to reach the target. So at the moment the shell velocity is 975 meters per second. That's being nerfed to 619 meters per second. So even though it doesn't have the fastest shell velocity, that's going to take a lot of getting used to. Shell velocity is getting such a big nerf. I'd forgotten about that one. The accuracy is being improved. The aim time is being nerfed. Basically, accuracy on the move, shooting on the move, is being nerfed by a huge amount. It's still going to have 10 degrees of gun depression, and its turret traverse is actually going to be improved. It's being buffed from 40 degrees per second to 49.5 or 45.9. But huge changes in store for the Chaffee, and whether or not that's going to destroy the tank or whether it's still going to be a great little tank is going to be the subject of a future video. But that's pretty much me done with the Chaffee. The next big change is the Chaffee is no longer end of line. Its matchmaking is going to be improved or nerfed depending on how you view the tank, but it's not going to be end of line anymore, and you will be able to move on to the T-37 from the Chaffee. The T-37 is the first of 3 new American light tanks added to the game. So you move from the T-37 to the M41 Bulldog and then to the T-49. Yes, not the T-49 that was previously a Tier 5 TD. That tank is now known as the T-67, which apparently is more historically accurate, and the T-49 is now going to occupy its place as a Tier 8 American light tank. So the Chaffee no longer a deadline, and we're going to be moving into the new tanks now. But as you can see, you've got a choice from the M5 Stuart to either go to the Chaffee or the M7, so you've really got a choice as to which line to go down. In fact, the only way you can actually play all of these tanks is by going down to the M7. So the first place the line splits is at Tier 4 with the M5 Stuart, and you've got to make a big decision as to which line you're going to go down, because there are great tanks on both lines, and they both end up at the same place. So from the T-49 at Tier 8 and the T-69 at Tier 8, the medium tank, they both lead on to the medium tank at Tier 9, the T-54E1. So it's a big decision as to which line you're going to be choosing from the M5 Stuart, or if you're like me, you'll probably just do them both. But the line splits at the M5 Stuart at Tier 4, and it joins again at Tier 9 for the T-54E1. To move from the Chaffee to the T-37, you're going to need about 28,000 XP, which isn't too much if you currently got a Chaffee. If you currently have a Chaffee and it's got its current Tier 10 matchmaking, it's not going to take you very long to grind 28,000 XP. But you're moving on to the T-37. And what a beauty the T-37 looks like. This tank looks awesome. I'm just talking about its model. This tank looks very cool. As I say, it's going to cost you about 28,000 XP to grind from the Chaffee. It's going to cost you 910,000 credits to buy. And this is a really interesting Tier 6 light tank. I mean, it looks beautiful, but it also has some really nice stats. Health-wise, it's got 680 hit points. Now again, I'm going on fully upgraded, not stock values. All the values I'm going to be giving you is when it's fully upgraded, but 680 health on a light tank at Tier 6 is very good. Like all light tanks, it doesn't have a lot of hull armor, so I'm not going to be talking about the hull armor on any of these new tanks, but it has a top speed of 66 kilometers an hour, so it is fast. It is very fast. It's got a very good view range of 390, which again can be buffed up, and its radio range fully upgraded is going to be 745. So a pretty standard scout setup there. Decent hit points, very fast, and nice view range and radio range. It's going to weigh 23 tons, have a 500 horsepower engine, and have horsepower to weight ratio of 21.6. So this thing is going to accelerate really, really quickly. It's got very, very good hull traverse at 48 degrees per second. Its turret traverse is very, very good at 44 degrees per second. And its terrain resistance values are pretty good too. So it's going to be a very fast, mobile tank. And in fact, looking at all the stats for all the American light tanks, I'm going to have to buy more garage slots because I don't think I'm going to be able to sell any of them. And one of the really interesting things about the T-37 is the fact it has two final guns. You've got a choice. It has two final guns and they are both 76mm. You've got the T-102, which is an autoloader. Yes, it's an autoloader. It has 5 rounds in the clip, and basically it has 137mm of pen and 115 damage. Does that sound familiar? Yes, it does, because it has the same penetration and alpha damage as the Chaffee currently has pre-nerf. So it's going to be a tier 6 light tank with a gun that's very, very similar to the Chaffee's as is in game at the moment. But it's going to be a 5-clip autoloader, and it's going to have a reload time of 20 seconds, which is not great, but it could still be very, very fun. The aim time is 2.1, which could be better, but it's still very, very good, and the accuracy is pretty decent at 0.38. It's got 9 degrees of gun depression. So I think this tank is going to play a lot like a Chaffee, but a faster Chaffee. With an autoloader. So I don't think the Chaffee in spirit is dead. If you loved playing the Chaffee as it currently is in 9.2, I think you're going to have a lot of fun in the T-37. It may be slightly bigger, I think the model's a little bit bigger, but it's going to be a faster version of the Chaffee with a very, very similar gun regarding penetration and alpha damage, and it's going to be an autoloader. Now, I did say it had two guns because it also has a 76mm T91 as an option for a final gun. And basically what that is a very, very good gun. It's got 150mm of pen compared to the 137mm on the autoloader. It has the same alpha damage of 115. Its reload is only going to be about 3.3 seconds, so it's going to be a rapid firing non-autoloader version of the 76mm. It's going to have better penetration. Its reload is very, very good at 3.3. Its aim time is excellent at 1.9, and its accuracy is better at 0.36. It's still going to have 9 degrees of gun depression. So if you've got a T-37, you're going to have a very difficult decision to make, whether you're going to go with the 76mm autoloader and suffer slightly worse aim time, slightly worse accuracy, and slightly worse penetration, or go for the standard 76 T91 and have better penetration, better aim time, and better accuracy, but it's not an autoloader. But regardless, both guns I think look very, very good on this tank, and I am really, really looking forward to playing the T-37. I think it's going to be just a big Chaffee. Moving on from the T-37, we are going to be moving to the M41 Bulldog, another new light tank that's been added in at Tier 7 for the American light tank line. It's going to cost you 56,000 XP, just over 56,000 XP from the T-37 to get to the M41 Bulldog, but looking at how much fun the T-37 could potentially be, I think it's going to be a pleasure to grind out an M41 Bulldog using the T-37. It's going to cost you 1.37 million, so again, pretty standard for a light tank at Tier 7. And once again, it looks very, very cool. It looks like a very, very cool tank. It's going to be a Tier 7 light tank, and it's going to have 910 health, which is pretty good. Its hull armor, again, next to no hull armor due to the fact it's a light tank, but it does have a maximum speed of 72.4 kilometers an hour. This thing is going to be even faster than the M37. The M41 Bulldog is going to be such a fun tank to play. It's going to have 400 meters of view range. It's going to have 745 signal range, so it's a perfect scout. Really, really fast, great view range, and great signal range. It's again going to be a pretty light tank at around 23 tons, but it's going to have a 550 horsepower engine, which gives it a really nice power to weight ratio of 23.6. Its hull traverse is insane. It's going to have a 56-degree hull traverse. This thing is not only going to be able to travel at 72 kilometers an hour, it's going to be able to traverse at 56 degrees per second, and its turret traverse is 50 degrees per second. It can turn its turret, it can turn its hull really, really quickly. The terrain resistance looks very, very good on this tank as well, so this looks like a very, very fast maneuverable tank once again. It's fantastic. Again, it looks like a very, very fun tank. I cannot wait to get into an M41 Bulldog, and I pretty much predict that I'm going to have to keep this tank too. I have no idea where I'm going to get all these American light tank crews from, but I'm going to have to get them from somewhere. And just like the M37, the M41 has a choice of two final guns. They are both 76mm, and just like the M37, the Bulldog is going to have the choice of a 76mm autoloader or a 76mm standard cannon. The autoloader is going to be the T91E5. It's going to have 10 rounds. Yes, 10 rounds in the clip. It's going to have 175mm of penetration and 150 alpha damage. However, there is a downside. The reload time is going to be quite a lengthy 32 seconds. So you're going to have 10 shots in your clip, but it's going to take you 32 seconds to reload. It still might be a very, very fun tank because, again, it's got 175mm of penetration, 150 alpha damage, and if that sounds familiar, it's because it is. That's the same penetration and alpha damage as the T71 gets. So the other Tier 7 American light tank has the same penetration, has the same alpha damage, and it also is an autoloader, but the difference is the T91E5 has 10 rounds. Its reload time may be a lot longer, but it does have 10 rounds. The aim time is 2.1 seconds, the accuracy is 0.4, which is not great, but it's workable, and the gun depression is 8 degrees. The standard 76mm final gun available for the tank also has 175mm with 150 alpha damage, but its reload time is a pretty reasonable 3.5 seconds. The aim time is a very good 1.9 seconds, and its accuracy is 0.38. So again, not the most accurate, but it's still pretty good. However, the standard cannon, the standard 76mm gun, is going to give you 10 degrees of gun depression, so you're going to have a lot more gun depression with the regular cannon than you are with the autoloader. But again, two very, very difficult choices to make for final guns. They both look really, really good, and they both look very, very fun on a tank that looks incredible. So I'm really, really looking forward to the M41 Bulldog, and if you like light tanks, I reckon you guys should too. But we're not done there yet, because we move on from the M41 Bulldog to the T49, or the new T49 as opposed to the original Tier 5 TD. The T49. What can I say about this tank? Well, let's just start with the basics. It's going to cost you 101,000 XP to grind out a T49 from the Bulldog, but again, just like the previous tank, the Bulldog looks so much fun. I don't think that's going to be too big a chore. I'm going to be playing both of these tanks for pleasure. I don't care about the XP, that's just going to be an added bonus. It's going to cost you 2.38 million credits to buy, so expensive but not too expensive, especially considering it leads on to another very, very good tank, the T54E1. And as always, the stats I'm going to give you are based on a fully upgraded T49, not stock. But look at this beast! Look at it! It is so pretty. It is a beautiful, beautiful looking tank. It looks very, very modern. And look at that gun. Yes. I'll talk more about the gun in a moment. Health-wise, the health is pretty good at 1100, and again, as a light tank, the armor is nothing to talk about. It's going to be fast. It's going to be 72.4 kilometers an hour regarding its speed. It's just going to be another really, really fast tank. Its view range is going to be 400, and its radio range is going to be 745, so pretty standard for higher tier scouts. It's going to weigh about 22.5 tons, and it's got a 550 horsepower engine. So yes, again, the horsepower to weight ratio is very, very good at 24.6. The hull traverse, however, is not as good as the previous Scouts. The M37 and the M41 Bulldog have more hull traverse, but the hull traverse is not bad. It's got 44 degrees per second of hull traverse, and the turret traverse is very, very good at 44 degrees per second. So it's not going to turn quite as fast as the earlier tanks, but it's still very, very fast, and the turret can turn just as fast. The terrain resistance is unfortunately a little bit worse on this tank than it is on the previous Scouts, but again, not by much. I don't know how it's going to affect it until I actually start playing it, and I'm going to be grinding to the T49 as quickly as possible, because the tank comes with 2 guns. Now, this one is a little bit easier for me, because looking at the stats of the 2 guns, the choices are between a 90mm T123E3 and a 152mm XM81. Now, the 90mm is the stock gun on the tank, and it has pretty poor penetration all round. The AP ammo is only 112 or 102 millimeters of penetration with 320 alpha damage, so I guess you're going to have to aim for those weak spots, but even a lot of those weak spots are not going to be pennable. But that's okay, maybe you can use HE. Well, yeah, the HE is only 45 millimeters of penetration and 320 alpha damage, so the HE does the same alpha damage if it pens as the AP if it pens, and I think it's going to be very difficult to pen targets with either HE or AP in this tank. Certainly the T30 or the T37 and the M41 Bulldog are going to have an easier time of penning tanks. The HESH ammo for the 90mm, and it does get HESH as premium ammo, has 250 millimeters of penetration, which looks pretty good, but you're getting penalized by only 240 alpha damage. So really, I don't think the stock gun on this tank is very good. It's going to take a lot of ammo swapping and a good selection of ammo to get the most out of it. However, its reload is pretty good at 6.3, its aim time is okay at 2.3 seconds, and its accuracy again is pretty good at 0.38. It's also got 10 degrees of gun depression, so yeah, I mean, the 90mm, I can't get my head around how you're going to be playing that gun, but it is just a stock gun, and it's only one step closer to that 152mm XM81. Yes, you heard me, 152mm. Now, if you watch my stream, if you watch my channel, you know I love my KV2, and the KV2 has a 152mm gun as well, and it's basically the same gun. The T49 is all going to be about the final gun, the 152mm XM81. This is, yeah, you heard me right, a 152mm gun on a Scout. You guys know how much I love my KV2, and yeah, I'm getting the same gun on a Scout tank. It is going to have 76 millimeters of penetration and 910 alpha damage with its standard ammo, which is HE by the way. So 76 millimeters of penetration with its standard ammo, which is HE. It's premium ammo, and this gun is a little bit special because it gets 2 types of premium ammo. Its first type of premium ammo is heat, and it's going to have 152 millimeters of penetration, but takes a alpha damaged nerf of 700. So if you're going to be firing heat in this gun, the penetration is okay at 152, still not as good as the previous tanks with their final guns, but the alpha damage is going to be 700, which is not as much as a HE penetration. The second premium ammo on this tank is also HE, so you're going to have a choice of 2 different types of HE on this tank. The second premium ammo, HE premium ammo, is going to have 85 millimeters of penetration, and again 910 alpha damage. So the difference between the standard HE and the premium HE is a whole 9 millimeters of penetration. Is it going to be worth it? Probably not, in my opinion. The reload, however, is quite long. The reload is going to be 23 seconds, and it is going to be painful. I think that's a painfully slow reload, but The fact you've got a KV2 gun on a tier 8 light tank kind of makes up for it, and at least you'll be able to run away and hide and reload. The aim time is terrible. 3.6 seconds, really bad aim time. The accuracy is terrible at 0.6. So really it's a hugely inaccurate derp gun, just like it is on the KV2, but it's on a really fast mobile tank. I am so looking forward to playing the T49. However, the gun might be a big letdown, because one of the strengths of the KV2, even though the stats look very similar to the gun on the T49, is that the KV2 seems to have this magical ability to snipe, and I don't know about this tank. If this tank has that same ability, maybe it could be fun, but yeah, as I say, aim time and accuracy is not good on the tank. So it's all about sneaking in, getting close, getting to the side and rear of enemy tanks, derping them, and then running away. It could be fun, who knows? And the final gun also has 10 degrees of gun depression, so you're going to be able to use hills and slopes to your advantage. But all in all three new light tanks look absolutely amazing, guys, and I would start grinding out XP on your Chaffee right now if you have one, and if you don't have one, don't bother. It's going to be a lot cheaper to grind out the Chaffee playing the M5 Stuart than it is currently when 9.3 hits. But really looking forward to the new American light line, and that is my roundup. They look like fun tanks. Can't wait to get my hands on them, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.